Okay, so the topic for this session is GitHub Copilot for SQL development. We'll try to integrate the power of AI into database development into your regular IDE so that you can use AI in your day-to-day database development. Hi, I am Shubhojit. I'm a computer science engineer, MBA from IFT Delhi. I am working in Microsoft for the last 1.5 years, a little more than that. Um, Interesting fact, I am speaking at a conference for the first time, so please cut me some slack if I make some errors. I'm also the PM lead for SQL Server Data Tools, which is on Visual Studio. So just in case you don't like that product, you have recommendations, feature suggestions, please throw it at me. I'll try to help you out. Fun fact, I love food, and London has been treating me really good. Uh, This is the abstract for this session. Please go through it once. I know you might have read it, but I don't want your time is valuable. I don't want to waste it. In a couple of minutes, if you feel that this is not the right session, please feel free to walk out. Totally fine, not offended. This is the session feedback link code. Whatever feedback you have, you can share it here. SQL Bits also does great work in helping provide some donations to the charity for every feedback that you give. The agenda today is really simple. I'll give you a very basic overview of what Copilot is. I'll get you started. I'll talk in the absolute layman language and try to walk you through the very basics of Copilot, how to set up the account, how to do the first time hands-on with AI and have the first experience of database development. I have some demos recorded because I have been told to do so, but I'll be really brave and try to do one or two live demos. If they fail, I have a recording as a backup. And I'll also talk about some more complex things like complex joins, performance optimization, and we'll see how AI can help you in getting that done. Okay. So before I even start, I really want to understand the audience as a whole. Uh, a lot of people are SQL veterans. So I really want to understand what was the first SQL server you used? How did you write T-SQL query? Because I'm really new to SQL development. I really want to understand if anyone interested to share the first SQL server that you've used. Anyone? 17? Okay. Uh, can we have the mic, sir? Okay. Maybe a line or two with the first time you coded in SQL. Yeah. Uh,
0.5.
T-SQL 6.5, 2006. SQL Server. Oh, okay. Real.
I started with SQL Server 4.21.
Okay.
A.
Oh, and during those times you had to remember all the syntax codes. How did you script? Did you?
Like today.
Yeah.
Like today.
Oh,
So
same.
it's,
So
you had no intelligence or something like that.
okay, cool. Anyone else want to share anything? Yes, sir.
I use Sybase 4.9, I think, long before SQL Server.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That would be all. Okay, can we have a show of hands of anybody who's DBA? I guess most of you are. Okay, lesser than expected. Data engineer? Oh, a lot. Consultants? Okay, so we often hear these words DBA, data engineer, but we predict some ways in which you use SQL and we try to make the experience better. So in this entire process, we would definitely want your feedback, and wherever you feel that AI can really help you in your work, we'll try to implement that in the product. Okay. So before I go into GitHub Copilot, I want to take you back to the first class of computer science engineering. I did it in 2011, where in my first coding class, I was told that whenever you're writing a piece of code, you're expected to write a sentence on top, which is called the comment, which should explain what the code means. Okay. Fast forward to 2024, we are at a time when we just expect you to write the comment and we'll write the code for you. So this is what natural language to SQL essentially aims to be. And we want to reach to a paradigm where you write your expression or whatever you want out of a piece of code in natural language, and we'll write the code for you. You might have to make a few small changes, and then woof, we have the code. I'll just go to the editor. Yes. Okay. So since we are in the UK and the theme is um, aviation, so let's create a database. So here we have, so the moment you write a piece of natural language, we have a prompt. The moment you press the tab button, it gives you the actual piece of code. We'll run it. And here we have. So it integrates into your general working pattern so that at any point, wherever you're working, it tries to figure out what you would want out of it. Now, this is a session that I have opened in Azure Data Studio. Um, the more you write code in the same session, uh, Copilot tries to identify your persona and tries to optimize the recommendations that it is generating based on the way you code. So trust me, I've practiced it quite a few times. Hence, it is giving me the option to create a table pilots. If you try it for the first time, it might not give you this recommendation for the comment. So even the comment that we are expected to write uh, is kind of given as a suggestion. Once you press enter, it gives you the table. Now, if you want to make changes to it, for example, I want to go to Heathrow and it has execute. Even if I want to put in some new rows, we have the insert command ready for us. We press enter and it has some values. Now, if you want to change the values, you can go ahead and change it here, and then the database works in that fashion. So whatever you want to do, this integrates along with your editor, and it just works. Now, after some fun, I'll go back to some boring theory and try to explain you how it was. Yeah, I kept this demo ready just in case it didn't run. Okay, so what is GitHub Copilot? GitHub Copilot provides you an autocomplete style suggestions from an AI pair programmer from within a developer's IDE. So you can be using any IDE. It can be VS Code, it can be Azure Data Studio, it can be SQL Server Data Tools in Visual Studio, it can be JetBrains. We are trying to partner with multiple more IDEs so that we are able to bring the support there. And it just, if you have the extension, it automatically provides you the coding suggestions within the IDE. Now we have three things inside an IDE which supports you. Two of the things you already know. One is IntelliSense, another is code snippet. In both of these things, and please understand, these three things are different and we have no interrelation between them. So you might be seeing an IntelliSense recommendation in the IDE as well, and also a recommendation given by Copilot. both the recommendations can be different at a different point of time. Copilot or the AI would try to understand your pattern of coding and would learn it based on how much you use it, where in the session you are. As of now, all major IDs support GitHub Copilot, uh, other than SSMS. For any questions on SSMS and Copilot, we have Joe here. You can always redirect the questions to him. Yes. So a few prerequisites uh, that you need for Copilot, just in case I'm able to convince you enough by the end of the session that this is something which you can give it a shot at. You require a GitHub account, a subscription to a free trial of GitHub Copilot, or a paid subscription, just in case you're ready to experiment all in. Once you have this subscription, you need to download the GitHub Copilot extension in the IDE of your choice. Uh, and then you're almost ready, except you just need one more thing, which is the curiosity to experiment with AI. Remember, this is co-pilot and not pilot. So you have to experiment, you have to understand how it works, how it can fit into your regular database development, and then make the most of it. Okay, so I have a short demo which explains how you can create, right from the beginning, how you can create a GitHub account and just see if, yeah. So you can sign up for GitHub, create a password, we'll do some validations. I did it with my college account because it was free. Once you have the account created, you go to github.com. You see that the account is there. You go to GitHub Copilot and you want to try it out for free. You require your credit card details because it's a first time it will ask for it. And once you're ready, you can download this extension in your favorite IDE and start. This is the cost structure of GitHub Copilot at the current stage. For individual, it would cost you $10 per month. For business, $19. And for enterprises, it is $39 per user per month. Now, how does this model work? We might consider. So in the code editor, when you're writing a piece of code, it tries to identify what is the language you're looking for. So we have a code classifier which tries to identify, okay, you're using Azure Data Studio, the extension is .sql. Maybe you are writing a SQL code. So it first identifies that. When you're writing a piece of code, when you're writing a piece of natural language, it tries to look some pieces of code before it and some pieces of code after it if it is already written. It tries to push this code into a proxy server where it tries to identify if we have any personally identifiable information in that piece of code, or if there are any hate speeches, basic sanitization we do. After that, this same piece of code is returned to the model. When we say the model, it is the latest model of GPT, from where the code comes to the proxy server back again. The proxy server is in GitHub. We check for the code quality to understand if there are, any vulnerabilities like SQL injection, any cross-site scripting. If we find that, we remove that code away and we get a fresh piece of code. Everything done within the time you write the prompt, you press the enter, and you see the piece of code. Then we do a duplicate detection. Now, we can sympathize with enterprises which needs to ensure that the code that they're writing are not proprietary codes or licensed code. So if the suggestion that we are generating is above 150 characters, uh, which is basically big enough to matter to the legal team, then we go back to GitHub and check it with a billion of with billions of codes. We have a budget of 10 to 20 milliseconds in which we check, and then if it crosses all these 5 parameters, we give it as a recommendation within the code editor. So yes, before I move into demos, if you have any questions I would like to address, then I can move into demos. Yes, sir.
Does this mean that ChatGPT has access to all the code on GitHub?
No, the code that we are sending, that piece of code gets inside ChatGPT. It gets an answer and it comes back here. The code is only a part of ChatGPT's server till the time it gives back the recommendation. Once the recommendation is given back, it is not considered. Even for enterprises, we have a different model where the code that you are giving is also hosted within the environment of
So
your.
the check is done not against actual code on GitHub.
Sorry, I didn't.
You said that there was a check to see if the code was unique.
It is encrypted, but it is checked with all the codes which are there in GitHub. The code, just I'll go back to the previous. Like in the duplicate detection part, it goes and checks with like billions of code which are there in GitHub. But the piece of code which we want, basically it takes in a session. I was just using a session. In a session, you might have written like 20 lines before the natural language prompt that you've given. It takes that 20 line and tries to identify if you want something from there. It is encrypted in the entire process, and then it tries to check the code that ChatGPT returns back. That code is checked with billions of code which is in GitHub, and then it gives you that code. So it is not your code which is taken there. It is the code which is generated by the GPT model.
But this means that all code that is on GitHub is accessible to ChatGPT.
The open source codes which are there, they are accessible to GitHub.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, that also means that here's this GitHub Copilot learns the internal structure of a company. That is, so when I create tables, databases, and so on, it automatically gets a view about our internal structures.
Within that session, yes.
Yes, but as I understand it, all the data is transferred to the Copilot via this proxy.
To the proxy server, yes.
Yeah, so that is, GitHub learns my internal structure. The issue is that some companies, in particular my one, definitely don't want it. So they want developers to be more productive using this kind of tools, but they don't want to offer internal information to the public. That is, what we can do is, or what we do have maybe is kind of an internal instance of ChatGPT. That it can, is it also maybe an option to get this technology in with an internal, just for an internal purposes?
That is what Copilot for Business is catering to. That is where we are hosting every detail that is there is within your system. But if you're looking at Copilot in the vanilla edition, it's for individual users. For every session, it is trying to get the data, what you're trying, so that it can give you better output. I have one of the demos where I'll show you contextualization of how it understands the database that you're using. And it will give you an incorrect answer till you put contextualization into it.
I mean, it could be maybe possible that somebody on GitHub just mentions, how do I say, the name of my company or so on, in order to get maybe kind of view, or like, give me something typical, the same structure as maybe, how do I say, Amazon has, or so it learns and can reproduce them.
No, that is where the personal identifier, the first thing, the PII, it tries to identify if the request that you've made in natural language has any personally identifiable information which might give you, which might give the proxy server the idea of who you are. So if it has, it all automatically cancels out that natural language, and it tries to build it in a fashion where it does not have that personally identifiable information within the tokens which are generated for the model. Anyone? So,
In your example earlier, it generated an insert statement, but it did not specify the column names. I don't like it. Would it learn that I don't like that? If I overwrite and I say, no, it is insert, and you specify the columns, would Copilot learn my way of doing it?
it learns within the session as you move forward. I have 1 or 2 demos to show. Yes, sir. That would be the last question before I move ahead with the demos. I'll take the remaining questions at the end of these.
It's a little related to the previous question. Is it possible to template so that I can dictate how to write code formatting wise? So I want columns like this and the comma in front, not in back. And
Eventually, it
stuff
will
like that.
learn. Like, for example, in the first piece of code which it generates, if you make certain changes that how you want it, probably in the next piece of code, for the same kind of a natural language prompt, it will generate a type of code which you are looking for. It takes 1 or 2 tries, but eventually it will understand the way you are coding, and it will generate outputs like. Thank you. Can I take the question after? Thank you. So yes, we have in the. We'll go into a little more complex things which it can do. I have these demos pre-recorded. So if you see that we are trying to, we are using the wide world importers database, and we are trying to create a join where it will generate, we are trying to create a statement where we are writing a specific query which expects to have a join. So we see that it is able to detect the database you're working on, and it joins it based on based on the supplier ID. Run you through a couple of please take cognizance of this specific query that I'm running, because I'll explain contextualization based on this query. So here again, we are using wide world importers database, and select statement with a from clause with a where clause is given, and it is able to join both the tables based on a specific clause. Now, this is something which I was using in Azure Data Studio, okay? And it already had idea about the database that I was using, because I had the data definition language already pasted. I'll take you to a code. In this demo, I am using the same query which I'm writing in Azure Data Studio. I'll take the same natural language prompt and try to do it in Visual Studio or SSDT, which does not have the context of the database that I'm using. Now we'll look into it, how it works. While it delivers the correct code in Azure Data Studio, and we are seeing the right output, we go to Visual Studio and write the same prompt. Here, it is trying to get the best output, but it does not have any idea about the columns or the tables which are present. So it creates a query or a piece of code using invalid objects. Okay. Now, so we have to find out a way to give brain inside this AI. So we go to Azure Data Studio, we do a script to create of those tables. Now, in general, when we are writing complex queries, we know the tables we are concerned with. So we take the tables, we just copy the data definition language of these tables and paste it within the same session. So we are using purchase orders and purchase order lines, and we are pasting it within the same session. Purchase orders, purchase order lines. We'll delete this. Now we have the same natural language input, and we'll see that it is generating the right query. So this process is called contextualization. Till the time we are able to completely have contextualization inbuilt within Copilot, which also requires certain permissions from the users explicitly, contextualization can be provided artificially using this process where we are artificially putting the data definition language within the same session. Sometimes it works for other sessions within the same IDE as well. Once Copilot has that context, it is able to generate right output for a natural language prompt that we give. Yes. We did some more complex joins where we required this is a join which required certain arithmetic operations along with multiple joins within the query, and Copilot was able to generate absolutely right queries based on the comment that we have generated. There were 3 joins, a group by clause, and 3 arithmetic operations which were going, and it generated perfectly fine. So this is the power of AI that we are talking about. Now we understand that we have a lot of database administrators, and we do certain repetitive tasks uh, within our database day-to-day development. So even stored procedures can be created using Copilot, and if you give the right language prompt, it is able to generate a stored procedure exactly as you expected. Sometimes you might have noticed that when I'm writing a piece of natural language prompt and pressing enter, we are expecting a piece of code to be generated, but it generates maybe another piece of natural language prompt. This is something which it develops based on the kind of language you're writing. Like I just created a table called Heathrow, a database called Heathrow. Once I am creating a table pilot, the next table it would expect is something which relates to that industry. So it is studying me, and it is then giving an output based on that. So similarly, when you're writing two lines of natural language prompt, it might expect you to write another line of natural language prompt, and it tries to give you that natural language prompt. But if you just start your sentence or the piece of code with just C or CREA, it automatically identifies that yes, you probably want to have the entire code, and you don't want to write more prompts. So it suddenly gives the code slowly. So yes, we have a stored procedure which got created, and if we want, we can even run that stored procedure. And so just when I write the word execute, it automatically identifies. I did not even put any natural language prompt. The moment I write the word execute, it automatically identifies what I'm trying to write, which might be a little difficult at this point for IntelliSense in all the editors that we use. So this is something which Copilot can assist you with. Yes. Similarly, I even tried out for a function and it was able to write that out. And when we are executing a function, these are the times when we don't recall the exact syntax or format of it, and these can be of real help. Now, while we are just not limited to writing complex queries, a very important aspect for SQL development or what database developers face is like how to make the query even more optimized, how to make it better with time. So Copilot helps you optimize the query as well. So certain key terms while we are looking at optimization, most of you would already know. Uh, One is parse time, one is execution time, one is elapsed time, and we have CPU time in both of them. But CPU time is something which you would not consider. It's the addition of both the elapsed times, which we check for performance indication. So in our first query, we have a very simple query. When we write it, we have an elapsed time of 165 ms. We simply write optimize the previous query. And we see that it is able to optimize. Now, this was a really simple query. Uh, Copilot successfully creates non-clustered index as well in a query. And we see a performance optimization here. And even for more complex optimizations, like replacing a cursor variable to create more optimized query, We see this exactly same result here with a better performance. So that kind of brings us to the end of the demos. A few things which we should be watchful about while we are using Copilot is like, don't use what you see, because it might generate some incorrect output initially till the time it is completely able to understand you better. We are providing you a co-pilot, you're still the pilot. Don't forget that you're on the seat. Uh, Writing the natural language has its own learning curve. The more you write natural language and see outputs based on that, you would understand what kind of natural language generates what kind of output for your editor. And after a point of time, you things would be really easy for you. The way you have coded for so many years, and now coding might be really simple. Somebody who's a veteran, for him it would be a learning curve to understand. But for somebody who's new to SQL, for him it would be like a walking stick, and he can learn, he can get into the thought process of implementation easier than thinking about the syntaxes. uh, in terms of performance optimization, we need to understand that sometimes, due to change of, like, for performance optimization, it might end up creating a query which has a different output. Just be wary of that, to check the output once. uh, it has happened with me once or twice, so just a word of caution. uh, these are the summaries. Like, we talked about GitHub Copilot, what it is. It is your personal coding assistant. Don't forget that you're still the pilot. This will only help you to become a more efficient version of yourself. We explained you the contextualization, where you can write the data definition language within your same editor, same session, and that would instill brain into your copilot, and it would help you generate better queries. We talked about optimization, and most importantly, your data is safe, it is with you, we are not taking anything. You can leave a feedback for me to encourage me to come again. That would bring us towards the end of the session. We have a discount on DP300 exam in case if you're interested to take it. This, I'm also the PM for SSDT, just in case if you have any feedback on SSDT, you can go to ak.ms/SSDT feedback. You can write it. We have a few blogs which we have published on this. There are tons of documentation. The blogs would also help you identify the documentation. So you can read them. You can reach out to me on my email ID or LinkedIn or Twitter profile. I would open for any other questions. Yes, sir.
Am I right when I say that Copilot has been trained by the SQL Server optimizer? So it has learned the algebraic or the mathematical functions of the SQL Server. That, you know, if I make a query, so it must know the optimizer or how the optimizer works. Otherwise, it couldn't generate the code.
Although I'm not aware of exactly how it writes the queries, but I can find that out and let you know. Okay.
Okay, but I mean, how does it work anyway? It's just about of the SQL language.
So if you type a question in ChatGPT and try to give all the context, like this is the table, this is this, this is that, it will try to generate a code and give it to you. What we are essentially doing is creating the context, creating it, and giving this answer within your environment. There are a few things which goes in between, but this is essentially what we are doing, that you don't have to have the hassle of going to ChatGPT, copying it and creating the context there and getting a reply from there.
In particular, in performance questions, you know. So when you say, please make this query better, so it must somehow know how it works.
It checks the previous query and tries to, if it tries to identify if there are any anti-pattern queries, or if certain major coding guidelines are not followed, and tries to remove and create a query which is better.
So does Copilot has access to my databases?
It does not have access to your databases as of now. That is the reason why we are providing the contextualization, and we are giving. Eventually, if we in the roadmap we are able to bring that feature and provide you contextualization, then we'll ask explicit permission from you whether you would want to give access to your database or not. So you had a question? That's fine. Yes, sir.
So is there any way to run the Copilot without access to the internet?
I'm so sorry. No. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Just to clarify the point that was made earlier by, from the earlier question. So just thinking, there are different subscription modes. The first one that you showed, which is the individual, that's the one that can potentially send your data to ChatGPT, right? But then the other option, which is the enterprise option.
Enterprise
keeps-
option just clubs in, like, in case the business wants to have certain information which they already want to feed into the system and then get output based on that. That remains within that tenet of data.
And
For
the da-
individuals, it is just the session which the data which Copilot is trying to understand and then generate output based on that.
Okay, but the enterprise option doesn't send your data out, essentially.
No.
It keeps it within. Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
When will there be an offline variant of this in Management Studio?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
When will there be an offline variant of Copilot in Management Studio?
When? Hard to say. We'll try. Yes, sir.
And actually, we have Erin Stellato in the audience who this is her vision, but I'll speak to it because I can't do the cardio.
Go
right
for
now.
it, Joe.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, we're looking at different Copilot experiences in SSMS. One of the obvious ones is an autocomplete type experience. Then there's the other that's like DBA type experience that you might have seen in the keynote, and also I had a breakout session. So we're looking at it that wouldn't be integrated in this way. This is just another option based again like on your context window. Does that answer your question? Okay. Oh, okay. So the question just for the recording is, will it take years? I mean, there's a sense that this is table stakes, that all vendors are going to be having some kind of experience along these lines. So we know it's important, and we'll be pushing hard. But that's not a commitment. We're not talking years, plural. How's that? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Anyone else? Well, thank you so much. You have a
Sorry, we have a couple of online questions from the
Yes.
virtual attendees. So the first question, first on the virtual attendees, is it possible for you to see the data that is being sent to ChatGTP for contextualization?
the data that is being sent to.
Yes. As can you see your data that's being sent up there for contextualization?
No, as of now, we don't have that
Okay.
option.
And then the other question was, over time, is the model continually learning from the developers who basically may upload their existing codes and snippets and schema definitions? And how is your, similar to the questions that were asked earlier, in terms of, as the code gets sent up, a view of your business will be built up. So how is the intellectual property of the business going to be protected?
So the code that we are getting, we have a check which checks if the code is a proprietary right of someone else, that it is being generated. But the code which is given to you, if you create an intellectual property right after forming the entire thing, I don't think that that has any problem. Like, we are just giving snippets of code that does not have any intellectual property right. And anything else from there? No? Thank you so much.